You don't need a promotion to level up your leadership. Serving on a nonprofit board might be the most overlooked high impact move you can make for your network, for your influence, and for your purpose. Come on, let's go ahead and dig into this conversation. Welcome to Transformation Station, where we dive into real strategies, shifts, and stories that move leaders forward with purpose. And today we're exploring one of the most best kept career accelerators out there, nonprofit board service. This isn't just about volunteering, it's about growing as a leader, expanding your visibility, and sharpening your decision making, and doing it all while making a difference. And before we meet our guest for today and dive into this conversation, I want to remind you that as this podcast inspires you and sparks transformation in your journey, continue to share the podcast. Now, I actually have some really good news to say to you today. That's right. Some really good news. Listen, because of you, our amazing community, we've been doing some celebrations over the last couple of weeks, but today we get to celebrate yet again because of you, we have hit 3,500 podcast downloads. That's right. Listen, give yourselves a round of applause. I want to thank you so much for your amazing contributions, how you have stayed with us, engaged with us, and also, guess what? We've only just begun. 3,500. I know you can cross us over to 4,000 and 5,000 really soon. So what that means is we're in season 3. If you have missed any episode, even one in season 1 and season 2, I want to invite you right now to go ahead and go back and listen to a previous podcast episode and share with the other leaders in your network so that we can continue to take Transformation Station all around the world. Well, listen, we have a great conversation that's about to happen. So I want to tell you a little bit about our guest. Our guest is named Carlee Wolfe. She is a strategist, a connector, and a coach, helping people and organizations thrive through change. With over 20 years of leading talent and culture and transformation across global brands like Under Armour, Hyatt Hotels, Apollo Education Group, and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, she specializes in turning strategy into behavior that sticks. Carlee, I am so happy to welcome you to Transformation Station. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is like a big day. You've got like milestones on your podcast. You're moving in the community. I'm just sitting back here like, this is amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you could be here to celebrate with us. So listen, we've been waiting to have this conversation for a while. And as I've been thinking about it, preparing for it, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the fact that while most professionals are waiting for someone to give us a bigger role, that nonprofit board leaders are out there building their own roles, right? In terms of learning how to lead across different sectors and managing various stakeholders and serving a mission that is bigger than themselves. So I want to start with this question. Let's look at the big picture. What makes nonprofit board service more than just giving back? And why is it a strategic career move for professionals and leaders?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, in the intro, you said it of just like it being a good, a meaningful career edge. I think you said one of the most opportune experiences. And I would also add in one of probably the unintentionally best kept secrets. I was just talking to somebody this morning about kind of the illusion of board work, and people talk about it and we say it's accessible, but oftentimes people actually struggle with getting in. So we'll talk about that today too, but I just wanted to like add, which is largely just first say like, it is a huge career enabler and I do encourage people to do it. And it is possible for everyone, right? It's taking the skill sets and the passion and the commitments. And I think those are important to deliver to the organization. And I say those are important because I just want to ground today with, yes, it's a career opportunity. I'll answer in the question. And I want also people to understand it's not like a training. It's not something we do. These organizations are also dependent on skills and commitment. So it's the marriage of the two. But why is it important for careers? I think a number of things. One, you're serving in a leadership capacity that you don't probably have exposure to in your day-to-day job, no matter what that is. The intent of a board member is to protect the mission of the organization, support that CEO as they're moving forward in their development, holding them accountable, being stewards and contributors to that mission. So that's
Yeah.
just, that's just a different mindset. You can step outside of your role. So, for example, I've spent my career in HR. Well, I could enter through HR or people, but I could also serve on the budget committee, get some additional exposure to finances. The strategies that nonprofits are putting forth, they're challenging, they're ever changing to meet the needs of the mission. And so to be at that strategic level, driving that forward, I think is an opportunity. Connecting with others and different skill sets and needs is an attribute. Influencing the demands of the board and helping the 3 T's of time, treasure, talent. So how are you helping on the fiduciary side, like these fundraising, volunteering, all of these things? The list is endless, and we're going to unpack these largely to say there's a large portfolio and reason why it's good for our careers. But I think it really just sits in it's a different seat, a leadership seat. It's a different area to influence. And it's an opportunity to apply skill sets that we have or skill sets that we want to grow against a mission that we care about.
Yeah, I love this. This is like really, I think this is a great way to open up the conversation today. And so, all of our listeners and our viewers right now, we always take a moment to do a little bit of reflection. So, as we're having this conversation with Carlee, we invite you to reflect right now on where would nonprofit board leadership fit in your life. One of the things that came to me as you were talking was this here, that it's not just about generosity. It's about expanding your capacity to lead, influence, and solve real world problems. And I love how you're leading us into this conversation. So let me ask you this, right?
Yeah.
What's the biggest myth about career growth that's holding people back right now?
Oh, I think either stated or unstated. I think the biggest career growth opportunity or that's holding people back is perhaps the mindset on what career growth looks like. I think we hold up this big expectation of I have to go to an event, I have to do this course, I have to like be profoundly different from when I started. When really career growth is about like one day at a time, one investment at a time, one moment at a time. And growth comes from the collection of those moments. And so I say, like, lower your bar of entry and start to think about what's important for you and where you want to go in your career and where you can find those opportunities and take one step at a time.
I love that. I love that. One of the ones that I thought about that I've seen like a quite frequently is if I just keep my head down and do great work, I'll get noticed and promoted. And
Yeah.
so many people, when it looks at career growth, they figure, let me just do the status quo, and then it'll just the return on value will be that. But I find that many times that is dangerous, right? Because it keeps us from building relationships. It keeps us from doing exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight, stepping outside of ourselves, self-sacrificing, being able to network. You mentioned that earlier, right? Networking, building community, which are so key when it comes to leadership. So from what you've seen, why do so many professionals feel stuck in their jobs? And what's the brutal truth about getting unstuck?
Hmm. I think there's two drivers to this. One is having a true vision for what unstuck is. In other words, what is next for me and what's important for me. I think a lot of times when we ask the question, if I asked you, what's your next step? I think some people hang that in a title or a thing, right? Let's just go a title. And I think just holding your next step in a title is really limiting on what's
Mhm,
possible for
mhm,
what's next, right? So
mhm,
again, if we think about it as a journey and we think about it beyond the title, what does that give us? Now, I'm not here to say, because I think a lot of people come and be like, don't just go about the title. In fact, I've been coached this my whole career. I believe in understanding the construct of a title. What are you aiming for? Because there's a reason there's a title associated, right? It's a understanding of where you're going and what comes with that. But what I'm saying is it shouldn't just be about that, right? If I only want to run a particular time space in a marathon, I'm going to lose the other aspects of, does this add to my overall health?
Mm,
Where does this fit in my long term about how I feel? What am I learning about myself in this journey? Right? There's like so much more reward that comes with having a destination. So I think
mhm,
that's one aspect of where people get stuck, is having a broader view of where I want to go. I think
mhm,
the other thing is that there are a lot of barriers, and there are a lot of things that tell us quite regularly that we can't do it. And
mm,
I think that I think most of the time unintentionally we let those messages sort of sit into us and be like, well, maybe you're right. Oh, there aren't enough roles here. Or, oh, you're right. Maybe I have to do this development. Oh, okay. No, like I think, how do we think about that differently? How do you shift that into, being your own author around
mm,
what possibilities are? And I know it's hard, so I'm not here to like say that it's not difficult, because it happens to so many of us. In fact, I
mhm,
don't think I've ever met anyone that hasn't felt this way, that they can't, like, that in within a career do something a lot of the times because of what's around us. So maybe
mm,
it's an acknowledgement and saying, like, yes, there are some things outside, that influence this, but where do I want to go and how do I want to do it?
mhm.
And that will kind of get me to the next path. But I also have to have a vision to understand where that is.
Yes, 1,000%. And to every leader that's listening and watching right now, we want you to just take a moment and just think about the seasons in which you felt stuck. What was the impetus behind that? Or maybe you're feeling stuck right now. Sometimes as leaders, we can feel stuck because we've outgrown the role, not the routine. We've outgrown the role that we're in, right? We know the job, we know we're good at it, but your growth is stalling, and staying feels safer than starting over. Or sometimes we confuse being busy with being fulfilled, right?
Mm.
Overworked, overstimulated, underdeveloped. Success on paper, but empty in purpose. Don't say ouch, just say, All right, leaders, take some time to stop and to assess, why at times have you felt stuck, or are you feeling stuck now? And then, Carlee, you mentioned a word that came to me when we talk about getting unstuck: clarity.
Yep.
Right? Getting unstuck requires clarity in terms of, sometimes, Carlee, we just have to stop and ask ourselves, like, what do I want?
Hmm. I think that question can be scary for people, which is why we don't ask it a lot, because it's pretty open.
Mm-hmm.
But just like taking one step at a time, I think you can take one step around, like, what do I want? Like, well, what do I want?
Yeah.
I want to have some autonomy. Great. Maybe that's just where I stop for that day
Mhm.
and I pick it up again, right? Just I appreciate that question. I also appreciate where people struggle. And so maybe
Mhm.
that's that, where you can give yourself credit and just kind of keep chipping away at it.
I love that. I love that. Give yourself some grace and an opportunity to have the conversation with no judgment. There are
Yeah.
sometimes I have to remind myself, this is a no judgment question. This is a no judgment conversation, Adrian to Adrian. Like, you're just answering the question. Don't add any additional factors to it. So let's
Yeah.
dig in.
No, and I'd love to add, like, real quick onto that, because I think that there are also tools out there that help us outside of ourselves, which is to
Mhm.
say, something like as simple as like a chat GPT, right? Typing in or doing a voice memo and just saying, here's where I'm at in my career, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm interested in. What
Mhm.
are a few questions that you could ask me to help sort of coach me or inspire ideation, or thought provoking ideas that I haven't thought about myself? So just
Mm,
marrying our major shift of AI worlds into, but how that can maybe enable us and help us where we do get stuck, even in the question of what do I want to do.
absolutely, 1,000%. So let me ask you, how has serving on a nonprofit board personally stretched or evolved you as a leader?
For me, it's multi-factored. So I think that I started the nonprofit board search with, like, yes, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to serve my community. I want to be able to contribute. What
Mhm,
immediately followed from that is, how do I get on a nonprofit board and where do I want to serve? So
mhm,
my initial discovery was a learning journey. There are different types of boards. There's several different type of positions that you can hold, and then for me, where does that play in? So there was some additional discovery that I had to do. How much time do I have? What are my
mhm,
skill sets? What are the missions? Where are they at in their maturity of the board? All of that. So that
mhm,
was stretching in itself, because I networked, I did programs and classes, By the way,
Mm,
Northwestern University has a free online board certification program. So I always recommend that to folks because it's exposure. It's good development. Even if you're not in a board today or thinking about it today, it's still about leadership.
mhm,
So that was a learning chapter. I think the other thing is also the mindset shift of where I needed to go. So I'll just pull on two nonprofits or a nonprofit in the city of Baltimore, where I serve for the Workforce Development Board. The small nonprofit, I work for a large global company, 200,000 people across the world. I now am serving something locally where there's 10 people working in the nonprofit. And that's just a totally different scale of, okay, how do we get work done? So again, networking, how have other people thought about it, did some research, did some evaluation. So that was a huge stretch in of itself, mindset stretch into what I'm doing.
mhm.
Also building new things. I work in leadership development and org effectiveness. I don't traditionally do HR policy as an example. Well, I've had to learn about that. So these are just things from my purview that I've learned. But what I've also learned is what I can contribute also sits in the not just the structure and the needs of the organization, but also the leader. So for example, the CEO, and how am I coach or looking out differently than I would from the purview of my current seat. So these are just a few things, but largely it comes down to leadership. It comes
Mm.
down to skills and experiences and mindsets. All have had to shift and stretch, and have been expanded for me as I've been on the journey.
I love that. Fantastic. This is phenomenal. And again, to our leaders who are listening and watching, we want to invite you to hear what Carlee is saying and take some notes and see how you can apply this to your life and your leadership. So, Carlee, most boards in our thinking, right, are stuck in old school thinking. How would you shake up nonprofit boards if you could rewrite the rule book?
Mm. Oh, it's so fascinating because also I love like the question, and I think is a good question for people to consider. Like, where do you want your service to sit in like the innovation thinking space? Because I think I've like found organizations that I think they actually push me on how I think about innovation because they can move faster than I can in a lot of ways in my corporate job. But if I had to rewrite nonprofit, someone said a while ago that to me said something to me a while ago that stuck with me, and I still don't know how this lands yet because there are regulations about, funds and where funds can go and all this sort of stuff. But I think rewriting the pay structure and what people get out of nonprofits, I think a lot of times there's this trade-off of literal like from a financial perspective, but they're like, come work for a nonprofit because it's good for a good cause, even though we may not pay you as much as a traditional role. And I would
Mhm,
love to if we can work that construct differently because the roles and the impact in the organization is immensely important. And the skill sets and experience that you require of these types of roles are actually almost could be even more demanding than that of like a in quote corporate job.
mhm.
So yeah, pay the people. That's what I would say. How do we shift that in a different model?
I love that. So you were talking about skills and experiences, right? So what skills or experiences do professionals gain from their board service that they can't access in their day-to-day? You were starting to talk about it. Take us a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first answer is always the good answer if it depends on the person's role and what they're seeking. But I think that leadership exposure and influencing a strategy from a place where you're involved, but you're just slightly removed enough. And by the way, that's intentional to provide a different oversight lens. So I think that's more of a maybe like mindset, a leadership mindset that you're gaining and learning. I think maneuvering in the what is the mission of this organization and what can I contribute is also a learned skill. And by that I mean that, a lot of us are used to having here's the org's purpose, and also I have a boss that I report to, and these are the things. It's almost revert. You have an org that you're serving, but you're almost kind of providing the in. Like, what can I serve? What can I provide? What can I influence, drive, and ensure we're staying on with? So even that, again, mindset and perspective is different. And then the skills are vast, right? Do I have financial skills, legal skills, planning skills that I might need in these roles that I've not exercised before?
Mm,
Networking skills. I think this is a great one for people to take on. One of the greatest things a board member can do is be out talking about the organization, bringing people in, and that is networking. And so I think that's a skill that you're learning in board work. I think running a business, literally, right? A lot of us sit in roles that we contribute to a business, but the fact is, you're overseeing an entire business and its mission. So I think the skill sets to understand enough about each part and piece is important. Like, for example, I've learned a lot about marketing and financials through my board work, something that sure I touch and I'm around, but it's not anything I have to know more of to facilitate. So those are just like a few examples. One thing I'll touch on, I mentioned there's all kinds of different boards, and you heard me nod to that I serve with the City of Baltimore Workforce Development Board. There's also areas like that that are totally different when you talk about skill sets and experience and exposure. What can you gain from that? Like, I am learning a ton about my city. I'm learning a lot about policy, how policy is made, where funds go within the national, state, and local governments, how work gets done, how people can influence systems of change within the places that they live. So I'm just giving a totally different slice on something, which is, we've largely talked about nonprofit boards, but there are lots of different types of boards and also skill sets and experiences to gain from those as well.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the different type of boards.
So so there's for-profit boards, right? So the organizations that have that revenue and public offering, most case. You have your nonprofit boards that we spend a lot of time on, government agencies or state agencies. So those, they have boards. Those would be some key ones. I think there's also nonprofit board work with the different types of nonprofits, like how are they filed in the revenue and funding that they get. And then within that, there's also different types of roles. You can serve on the board, you could serve on a committee, you can be an advisor, you could be on a particular project, volunteer. All of these things sit in the, I'll call it the board ecosystem. But I share these because sometimes I think people wonder, like, well, how much time commitment is there? And where can I just get started? And these are ways that you can, kind of think through there. So back to have a vision for what you want to do and how you want to contribute. And that helps you also, when you go to interview, start to kind of match what makes sense for both.
I love that. So as we turn the corner on this conversation, I'm going to ask you this question. I know that there are leaders that are like, okay, Carlee and Adrian, this sounds good. You guys are kind of helping to excite me, but I'm still kind of hesitant, right? So what do you say to somebody who doubts their value to sit at the board table, to even be a part of a board?
Oh, I mean, if it's from a value perspective, I think that, to me, I'm going to make some assumptions here, which is people are passionate about it, and that they have some experience and that they show up and do their commitments. So if we go with that, which sounds so silly, but I think these are the things that is also important for the role. Sometimes people sign up for board work and they're not there to contribute, right? It is just a resume boosted, and that's not what we're talking about today. So working from that, I think that everybody has skills and experiences that can provide value at a nonprofit. Doesn't mean every nonprofit, doesn't mean even maybe the number one nonprofit that you're thinking about right now, but you have something to offer the organization as they bring their mission to life. And so I would explore thinking about your work experience, thinking about even some of your personal experience. Like, I've done a lot of volunteer work that's played into my service in my board role, and say, what's like one thing that I could bring to the table? Or starting the other way, which is, I'm interested in board work. Maybe I should do some networking and start talking to folks, or if I have a board that's interested, and say, where is your organization going in the next year or two? Where are you struggling? Where are you needing additional support? What's your board talking about? And then kind of do your assessment based on what you've learned and say, you know what? Actually, I think I could help with that thing. Oh, okay, cool. Like, I do that in my day job. So I think those are two ways that someone could go about exploring if they're having that doubt. But what I would say is, again, you're showing up, you're passionate, and you have skills. Finding that blend, and then the organization that needs those things, like, you're needed. I would put that I'd put that self-doubt aside in service to the mission and the community in which you're trying to contribute to. Because they need you.
I love that. So to the leaders, Carlee just told you, you are needed. You are needed, right? Do you care enough to contribute? Are you willing to learn as you lead? Are you willing to be consistent and show up? I love that. Carlee, if somebody wants to, can you just tell us again, like, how do I get started? What should I do to get started to look? Like, how do I know what boards? Is there like a list or like?
Yeah. I love this question because for a long time people are like, you should do board work. I'm like, where do I begin?
Mhm,
So there's a number of ways. So first of all, if you're already volunteering or serving organizations, I would talk to the organization. I volunteer here. I'm very interested in expanding my responsibility. Would love to learn about the board, your board, and where
mhm,
you're at, and if you might have opportunity now or down the road. It's an ask.
mhm,
There are different entities out there that help with what's called board matching service. So, for example, that's how I got started here in Maryland. There's an organization called Business Volunteers Maryland, but there is
mhm,
a nonprofit board source, I believe, is the organization's name, and related organizations like that. So, if you just get on Google and you say nonprofit board matching, would be you'd get your national footprint. But then if you're in, I'm going to just make up a state. I'm in California, nonprofit board matching California. You start to narrow into where you live. So board
mhm,
matching services is the short version of that answer.
mhm,
I think talking with people in your network in your community, right? Like, hey, I'm looking for a board. Again, it's got to start with a vision. I'm looking for a board. These are the things I want to do, and maybe the missions I would like to serve, because it helps people understand what you are asking.
mhm,
I would say those are probably like the big ones and the most immediate ones. What I also would recommend, right? We talked about government and city and state and national, right? You could check your like local communities and where they have boards and where you're serving. I mean, that's where a lot of people get started. Schools, school
mhm,
boards. Oh, that was another one you asked about boards. School boards. Um, so I
mhm.
think those are a number of ways that folks can get started.
I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. So listen, Transformation Station, this has been an amazing conversation. Carlee has given us like a masterclass on really, we talked about like what are these nonprofit boards? Why should anyone join them? What if you're stuck? How to get unstuck? And then Carlee just shared with us like kind of like the roadmap on okay, exploring. I want to invite you to watch this again on the replay. And I want to invite you to reach out to Carlee if you have any questions. We have an expert here. So, on that note, Carlee, as the leaders are here and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for a leader who's listening and watching to be able to engage with you and ask you some questions?
Yep, two ways. First of all, on LinkedIn, I would say on this conversation, I actually do post once a week. A friend of mine, Andy, who is founder CEO of TCP Youth Empowerment, we do a board talk series about these topics: how you get involved, things to consider, etc. We post on Tuesdays. They
Nice.
can also message me on LinkedIn if they want to talk directly. And then aceandarrowconsulting.com if people are also interested in connecting that way.
Love that. Carlee, thank you so much. This has really been a good conversation. And I know that there are leaders that are listening and we've given them a spark towards being self-serving and doing community service and nonprofit work. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to like hear, see, or feel people's impact in their communities. I
Yes,
hope this has sparked something in folks, and I just immensely appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Went the wrong way. There we go. We've had a great conversation with Carlee today, and I want to remind you that board service is more than just a resume. It's a leadership laboratory, one that stretches your skills, expands your influences, and roots your career in purpose. So, if you're ready to grow in ways your current role may not offer, consider this as your sign. Step up, serve well, and lead with meaning. Remember to reach out to Carlee, let her know that you heard or that you saw this episode, and ask some fruitful questions. And don't forget to subscribe to Transformation Station Leadership Podcast so that you can continue to lead outside the box. Until next time, stay grounded, stay generous, and stay growing.